Hello everyone, my name is David Veal, and my research paper was on the Sylvilagus floridanus, or the eastern cottontail. The eastern cottontail is found in North America, mostly the eastern United States, but also in parts of southern Canada, Mexico, and Central America. The ones I was studying were in Clifton, New Jersey, which is my home of residence. I chose the eastern cottontail because of the species around me. They're probably the most successful species I could have studied. There was also opossums, raccoons, skunks, but all those are nocturnal and not too friendly to run into. So rabbits were, they're pretty docile. They don't react too much if you come near, so I figured they'd be the best to study in this project. The eastern cottontail is a forager, very, very resilient forager. They eat over 100 different kinds of plants, and they're not picky at all. They'll eat bark, stems, leaves, twigs, branches, flowers, buds, seeds, fruits, grasses. Honestly, you name it, it grows, they'll eat it. They tend to eat certain foods depending on the season, though. In the summer, they'll eat more grass and weeds, and in the wintertime, they'll switch over to twigs and bark. This is mostly because of supply and demand. If there's not greenery, then they have the ability to survive off bark and twigs should the need arise. One rather nasty habit of the cottontail is to recycle their food. On the top left, you'll see green pellets that look like they still have plants in them, and that's because they do. The cottontail will actually eat more plants than it can digest, so plants that have still 100% of their nutrition will pass through the cottontail's digestive system and be, excreted into these pellets, which are essentially just balls of food. So what the cottontail will do actually is they'll eat more than they can handle, go somewhere safe, and essentially store it for later, come back and eat it. It's pretty nasty, but honestly it's probably better than a Big Mac, so we can't really knock them for it. The cottontail's reproduction is pretty interesting, actually. The males will fight each other for the females, and once the male establishes dominance, he'll do a mating dance, which I'll play for you right now, to woo the female. But it's pretty interesting. They call it the rabbit hop. And they'll just kind of jump around each other. And they'll do this when the female's in heat and has the pheromones that triggers the male to know that, she is ready to mate and to make new offspring. But pretty much they'll just play around with each other, and, it's actually kind of cute how they, have a little mating ritual. Once they do mate, the female, she'll make a nest, and it'll be lined with parts of plants and fur from her belly. The nest will be on the ground. It won't be in a burrow. They don't burrow. But it's usually covered up with more plants just to give it a little bit of cover. The mothers will nurse their young in the mornings and the evenings. They will leave the nest, unlike some animals, to find food and essentially carry on their normal life. But they'll come back in the morning and the evening to nurse the young. The cottontail's females will have 3 to 4 litters every year of up to 9 per litter. So roughly 35 to 40 young is possible for actually a single season. The eastern cottontail young are born with a very fine coat of fur. You'll see, like the one on the left, you'll see it's just pretty much like a straight brown. If I'll roll it back a couple slides, you'll see that one on the right has kind of that mulchy kind of look to them. And that coat is actually to blend into the environment. It's one of their natural adaptations so they can evade predators better. The young don't have that when they're first born, much like baby chicks are yellow and grown-up hens are white. But they'll eventually develop that coat in a few weeks once they're mature enough to start going through kind of the later stages of adolescence. When they're born, cottontails, their eyes, they're actually shut for the first 4 to 7 days, so they're virtually helpless, just staying in the nest, relying on their mother. They'll begin to leave the nest about 12 to 16 days and learn how to forage for themselves, how to feed themselves. And within 4 to 5 weeks, they'll be out of the nest and completely independent on their own as full-fledged members of the community and no longer learning how to survive. The habitats for the cottontails that I've been studying seems to be this shed. I don't think they actually live under the shed because I mentioned earlier they don't burrow, and the reason they don't burrow is so that predators can't capture them. Cottontails like to have as much mobility to escape as possible, so they'll actually not burrow and in exchange for that leave as many options open to escape. So there's bushes behind the shed, and I think it's more likely that they live in those bushes. But I always see the cottontails around that general area, and cottontails tend to not wander far from their home. So I think that's most likely their burrow, if you will, although it's not underground. Hello. Uh, the cottontails that I've been observing are clearly adapted to living around humans. They'll use man-made structures like fences to evade contact directly with humans, as in physical. While they obviously don't allow humans within a striking distance of them, the rabbits do seem to have very little fear of humans as long as there is some sort of barrier like a fence or a decent amount of space between the two. The rabbits I was studying seemed pretty much as curious in me as I was in them, like me and this guy here on the front stoop had a little staring contest. But they really didn't seem to fear humans very much, which I thought was interesting for a wild animal. Some interesting observations I did note during the course of this project is that information I read online about the rabbits said that they were most active during twilight and dawn and also moonlight hours, but I honestly found no correlation to the time of day to how active the rabbits were. My theory is that this could be due to a lack of predators. There's no coyotes or owls or hawks or foxes or any really effective predator in the area, and the rabbits could outrun, like a neighborhood cat, which would be pretty much the only real threat to them out here. So I think that this may be due to a lack of predation in them, that they are brave enough to go out in the daytime hours. Another thing was that excuse me. Sorry. This coupled with the lack of fear of humans makes me believe that the rabbits may have evolved, or maybe through nurture, seeing other rabbits, how they interact with the environment. But they seem to be a lot more brazen than rabbits that were studied in the wild and that I researched. And this, honestly, I think could lead to an evolution in them where they have less capabilities of the wild because they really don't have the necessity to have, the powerful hind legs, the like 18-mile-an-hour dashes that they can do. They really don't need it here. So I think, honestly, this brood that lives around me may eventually lose some of that capability if they're really not using it. One facet of the rabbit population that I did find very interesting is how few rabbits I actually encountered in their commune. Most I saw 3 rabbits, and that's the 2 adults and 1 child rabbit that I saw. And I find this interesting because the study was conducted over the course of their regular mating season, and we stated earlier they can have upwards of 40 children during that time. So, since there's only 1 rabbit spotted, that indicates to me that reproduction is limited in the area. Again, my assessment is that the carrying capacity of this area is less than the wild, and although there is an ample supply of greenery for the rabbits to eat, the numbers remain low. I know the cottontail populations are known to fluctuate, and perhaps at one time there were many more rabbits, but competition for resources was fierce in the area, and many died off. So I think that right now we're on a downturn of the rabbits, but if we're down to 3, I'm guessing that it's going to start swinging back up. And that goes with the trend of the cottontails, where they'll overpopulate and then die off and come back. So I think that's just the natural progression that they normally follow. Another theory is that maybe because there are not so many predators, it's not necessary for the local population to ensure the survival of the species by breeding so often. If they're living longer, then it may not be necessary to breed so often. In conclusion, I did learn a lot about the lagomorphic neighbors, which is their order. They will eat almost any type of vegetation, which makes them a pest to gardeners in the area. They recycle their meals in a way to maximize the nutrition from the plants they eat. Males fight one another and dance to attract a female. who can birth up to 40 young in a single season. The young are dependent on the mothers for a relatively short time and are independent by 5 weeks of age. They do not burrow as to not limit their ability to escape predators quickly. And the interesting habits of the rabbits that I've observed are the diminished fear of humans, the little regard to the dangers of being in sunlight, and the small population considering the relative safe haven of the suburban habitat. Well, that is my report on the eastern cottontail. I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to discussing it with you in the forums next week. Have a good day.